Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you for being with us here online. Welcome to Shade Tree Community Church. We want to extend to you a warm welcome, and we're glad that you're here with us on this fourth Sunday of Lent. I want to give to you a few announcements today as we lead into our service this morning. First of all, I want to continue to thank you for your ongoing support to the ministry here. This coming week, it has been 1 year since we met together in person. Now, we had a few of those outdoor services during the summer, but basically everything has been online. And so we're continuing to hope and pray that we might be able to get back together soon. But a year, can you imagine that? How quickly time flies. But you have been so faithful in your continued support of the ministry over that year through our online services and through our Wednesday night ministry and a few outreaches that we've done along the way as well. Today I want to thank you as well for praying for the ministry and pray as we continue to move closer to our coming back together. A couple of things I want to point out to you. First of all, we are doing a study called Extra Esther on Wednesday night. This is complementing what we're about to finish on Sunday morning, and that is the book of Esther. This coming Wednesday night is part 2. We're talking a little bit about those 2 genocidal decrees that are found in the book of Esther by Haman and by Mordecai. I uploaded the first one onto YouTube, so if you'd like to see that, you can go to our YouTube channel and see it. You can also join us live in person from 7 to 8 p.m., or you can also join by Zoom, use that ID number that's in your liturgy, or I will also upload the Bible study to YouTube as well. So I hope that'll be helpful to you. Now, since it's been so long since we've been together, we as a board decided to do something for Easter. Instead of missing Easter again this year, we decided that we would like to do a drive-in service. And so Easter morning, April the 4th at 11 a.m., we're going to use the back parking lot of McKinley Outreach Center, and we're going to have you positioned there. We'll be doing things live, and we'll also live stream as much as we possibly can. But we would love for you to just bring your car, stay in your car with your family. There's some activity bags that some of the ladies in the church are putting together for the kids. And I also had this given to me. This is a communion set. It looks like an hourglass, which is kind of interesting. On one side is the cup, on the other side is the bread, and we'll be taking communion together. Yes, it is gluten-free as well. So we'll be taking communion. We'll be celebrating the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, April the 4th, 11 a.m., back parking lot of the McKinley Outreach Center. At this time, let's go to our kids' ministry, please.
Good morning, church friends. We are continuing our series on God and nature, and I want to remind you of our affirmation. Our affirmation is all of nature holds the beauty and presence of spirit. And what this reminds us of is the gifts that all of creation gives us every day. I want to go ahead and read a Bible verse that we talked about last week. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament, or the earth, proclaims God's handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard, yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. So we're going to read a story today called A Walk in the City, and then I'll have some questions for you to see what you think. Tasha was out on the balcony of her family's second-story apartment when her father called her. The large planter box there held a lovely miniature world where Tasha imagined fairies napping on the woolly thyme and playing tag among the tulips. The trailing vine she had helped plant and grow long enough to hang over the edge of the balcony and wave at the neighbors below. She ran to join her father as he called again. It was errand day, and there was no more time to sit with the flowers. Her father's strong hand held hers as they stepped out into the noisy city sidewalk. Tasha looked up past the tall buildings to the friendly little clouds and the bright blue sky. The sun warmed her face, and she felt its happy energy. Their first stop was the coffee shop. While her dad stood in line, Tasha noticed a small black spider moving silently across the floor. She took a paper cup from the counter and put it in front of the spider so it would crawl inside. When they left the shop, Tasha gave one hand to her father and kept the cup in the other. She watched the curious spider explore the empty white world of the cup while they walked to the pharmacy. At the pharmacy door, Tasha gently let the spider out into a pot of welcoming pansies. As the spider tiptoed away, a ladybug landed on Tasha's sleeve. It magically folded its wings. The cheerful spots seemed to say hello, and Tasha invited it to ride along as they walked to the dry cleaner's shop. As they reached the cleaners, the polite ladybug winged its thanks to Tasha and flew into the sunshine. Her father met a friend outside the shop, and while the grown-ups talked, Tasha watched a determined snail move slowly up the concrete wall, leaving a shiny trail. She held the paper cup on the wall, and the snail moved in. All the way to the bicycle shop, the snail traveled around in the cup. Tasha could turn the cup in any direction, and the snail just kept sliming along with its antenna eyes going up and down. The bicycle shop had a long strip of grass in front, and Tasha found the perfect spot for the snail behind a large rock. While the snail munched on a leaf, Tasha watched two birds have a bathing party in a puddle left by last night's rainstorm. They were having such fun they didn't notice a long, tasty earthworm laying on the wet pavement. Tasha carefully picked it up and put it in her cup. She put it in a bit of wet dirt too, just for comfort. And the earthworm curled and wiggled in the little dirt it had, and Tasha watched it stretch out, then shrink again, all the way home. Tasha and her father climbed the stairs of the second-floor apartment and went inside. Tasha walked through the living room and out the balcony where the large planter sat in the sun. She looked carefully for the soft spot under the tulips and tipped the cup so the earthworm could dig a new home. Tasha was sure the worm and the fairies would get along very well. So my first question is, what else could Tasha have done with the animals? Why do you think she let them go? Do you know how any of the creatures that Tasha found are helpful to people or the earth? What about worms? What is the most interesting creature you've ever picked up? For my oldest son's birthday, Micah's, we went to a reptile place and he had a big snake around his neck. Do you ever feel God when you're noticing nature? I feel like the times that I experience God the most or spirit is when I'm outside. What about you? Do you feel that there is spirit in parts of nature? And if so, what's your favorite part? Do you like the mountains? Do you like the beaches? Do you like the lakes? Do you like your backyard? Any of those places we can experience spirit. Okay, church friends. So just like last week, I want you to find a place outside where you can experience spirit that makes you feel really, really, really connected to God. And let me know how it goes. See you next week.
Welcome to Lent Week 4. And we have said this period of time between Ash Wednesday and Easter Sunday is a time for reflection, reevaluation, reconciliation, and courage. And all these important qualities mark this important work of repentance. So we've been looking, or at least I've been mentioning each week, some scriptures sometimes that are attached to that particular week of Lent. Today, it's John chapter 9, and in John chapter 9, it's a lengthy passage. It talks about the man born blind. Now, last week we saw that Jesus drove out the money changers from the temple, and this week, if you were to read John chapter 9, there is ongoing controversy between the religious leaders and Jesus, and they asked this man who had been healed if this was Jesus. And of course he says, I was blind, but now I see. And all I know is this is the man that touched me. And that's an important part of the work of Lent. When we think about this blind man, we, like the blind man, have been given new sight in light of God, and it is found in Christ. The idea of being brought from darkness to light is found in the Scriptures. Here's one example of that. Psalm 107, verses 17 through 22 says this, Some were sick through their sinful ways, and because of their iniquities endured affliction. They loathed any kind of food, and they drew near to the gates of death. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He saved them from their distress. And He sent out His word and healed them and delivered them from destruction. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wonderful works to humankind, and let them offer thanksgiving, sacrifices, and tell of his deeds with songs of joy. You know how much I love Walter Brueggemann. He has this quote, "In light of this psalm, the work of Lent is to move our lives more fully into the practice of gratitude expressed in telling and in giving. The move entails a willful departure from the dominant ideology of our culture and takes the form of pride among the successful or takes the form of shame among the unsuccessful. It turns out that amid the goodness of God, neither our pride nor our shame counts for anything. A life given over to the telling and the giving may become unencumbered by either pride or shame, unencumbered enough to be lost in wonder, love, and praise." Join me in prayer, please. Great triune God, we have gathered here in your name as an act of faith, believing that you are not only among us, but that you love us. It is often hard to recognize your love, see your mercy, and feel your presence. Help us today in our worship that we might be transparent to your grace as you reveal yourself to each one of us. Amen and amen.
Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me song that learned sonnet, sung by fading tongues above. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy grace, Lord, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it that more thy courts above. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above.
Today, our scripture reading does not come from the book of Esther. It comes from the writings of the Apostle Paul from 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 6 through 10. There's a reason that I have chose this, and it will be pertinent to the end of my message in a few moments. The Apostle Paul writes this, "But we do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature, but not the wisdom of this age or of the rulers of this age who are coming to nothing. No, we declare God's wisdom, a mystery that has been hidden and that God destined for our glory before time began. None of the rulers of this age understood it, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. However, as it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love him. These are the things God has revealed to us by his Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. May God add a blessing to the reading of his word. Let's
Savior, I come, quiet my soul. Remember, redemption's here, where your blood was spilled for my ransom. Everything I once held dear, I count it all as lost. Lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. You were as I, tempted and tried, human. The Word became flesh, bore my sin and death. Now you're risen. Everything I once held dear, I count it all as lost. Lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Lead me to your heart, to your heart. Lead me to your heart. Lead me to your heart. Lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Oh, lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Oh, lead me to the cross.
There is a dynamic in the human psyche that longs for reversal. We would like life to change direction. Ironically enough, that's what repentance means. It's not really overwhelming shame. It just means changing direction. And during Lent, we evaluate the road we're going and if we need to go a different direction. But as we observe life, there are a lot of injustices that occur in life. And when it does, we would love to see a role reversal. When it comes to injustice, whether we're watching TV or the news, whether we're reading a novel, by the time we get to the end of that segment, we want to see the good guys win and the bad guys lose. And we develop a language for that, a rhetoric for that. Boy, I would like to see them get theirs. We use language like that. And I would like to call that the rhetoric of role reversals. As we come to Esther chapter 9 this morning, we're going to see a lot of rhetoric of role reversals. This dynamic starts when we are quite young. How many of you remember your arch rival on the playground? I think all of us have had those times where we have butted heads with other young people that we went to school with. And when we were in elementary school, when we were on the playground, some people actually got into fist fights over various things, but usually it was more verbal than anything else. Most of us actually used verbal altercations to get the job done. How many of you remember this one? I'm rubber and you're glue. Everything you say bounces off me and sticks onto you. And so when an individual called you an idiot, nope, it bounced off me and it sticks onto you. So we got wise to that and we began to say, you're beautiful, you're smart, because it bounces back to you. One of the things that has changed over the course of the years is the nature of trash talk. And what we find is, as we grow old, it becomes more sophisticated. So we will use things like satire and parody. Sometimes what we find ourselves doing is wanting to have the last word. Now, all of these things that I am saying right here pertain to Esther chapter 9. In fact, it occurs quite often in the Bible. And when it happens, it is subject to exaggeration and intimidation. Now, many of the things that we read in the Bible are expressions of the human spirit in an effort to get on top and to stay there. Many times in our efforts, we try to make the Bible simply a divine book, and that won't work because there's a lot of human elements to it. It's produced by human beings with all the qualities of those schoolyard bullies. Here's what I mean. The story of Esther is a story of reversals. Think about it for a moment. There was Queen Vashti, and she is replaced by Queen Esther. There is Haman, who is replaced by Mordecai. What we find is two decrees begin to take place in the book. The first one by Haman to exterminate the Jewish people. But by the time you get to the end of the book, there's a second decree written by Mordecai that actually is trying to exterminate the enemy of the Jews. Now, this is the last day we'll be using the chessboard as our metaphor. And we have been using the chess game as an example of various components in the book of Esther. One last one today. When you play the game of chess, there is a move that is called the swindle. The swindle is a ruse that is played by the individual that's losing the game to trick the other opponent into making a move that he or she ultimately does not want to make, thereby achieving the win. So a swindle can only happen when the one player with the advantage makes a mistake. Now in Esther chapter 9, there are some things in that chapter that are reported that should make us very uneasy. It is a swindle that is way over the top. Esther collaborates with King Ahasuerus to provide a solution for that decree by Haman that wants to exterminate the Jewish people. So this second decree that is written by Mordecai here is the swindle. It is that which is way over the top so that it will intimidate the opponent and eventually cause them to back down from that first decree. Now, there are some numbers that are stated here in Esther chapter 9 that are quite staggering. When this second decree is implemented by Mordecai and the rest of the Jews, by the time you get to the end of this second day, what we find is there are 500 men that are killed. The 10 sons of Haman are executed. The second day, there's 75,000 people that are killed. And if that's not enough, there's another 300 on top of that. My goodness gracious. So what we have is 75,810 people in this chapter alone that are executed. Now, does that make you uncomfortable? It does me. What is this chapter trying to do? So what we are observing is a complete reversal of fortunes for the nation of Israel. The Jewish people who were to be annihilated end up being the victors, and that's what is celebrated in the Feast of Purim. We'll talk a little bit about that as we end this study next week. All of this happens through this strange tale of reversal. And what we find is where there are reversals, there is the providence of God that's at play as well. I came across an old saying this week that seems to fit. It says, "A coincidence is a miracle in which God prefers to remain anonymous." God is never mentioned in the book of Esther. But he anonymously seems to put all the pieces into place, including this last decree that is the swindle on those that are persecuting the Jews. Now, this seems to be the point of the book. And what we find is that there's a lot of tension that is still in the book as you come to the end. When we get to the end of the book, what we find is this chapter potentially could have been a later addition. So we've been talking a little bit about that, and if you go back to our first Wednesday night study online and go to our podcast, what you'll find is that there are some apocryphal books that supplement the story. Now, this chapter seems to be a later addition as well. And so it is supplementing the story because really by the time you get to the end of chapter 8, the story of the threat against the people seems to be coming to a close. The people are feasting and celebrating, and the people are living in fear of the Jewish people because Mordecai is now second in power. However, there is still what is needed to provide the institution of the festival of Purim. So chapter 9 will tell us how victorious the Jewish people are on these couple of days. So this great theme of reversal is joined to the rhetoric that goes with it. In other words, the Jews got their enemies in their grasp. They were able to overcome the odds. Now, in this chapter, there's a lot of locker room talk. There is a lot of over-the-top language. And I don't know why this came to my mind this past week. It just did. Part of that old song from the 70s by Jim Croce, you remember, "You Don't Mess Around with Jim"? There is the reversal of fortune of two men in that story. So it's a ballad. This is a narrative. But in "You Don't Mess Around with Jim," do you remember? "Uptown's got its hustlers, Bowery's got its bums. 42nd Street got Big Jim Walker. He's a pool-shooting son of a gun. And he deceives people and cons people and takes their money. But the tagline is, you don't tug on Superman's cape. You don't spit into the wind. You don't pull the mask of the old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with Jim, right? Nobody messes with Jim until there's this South Alabama country boy looking for a man named Jim. He's a pool shooting boy by name of Willie McCoy, but down home they call him Slim. He says, I'm looking for the king of 42nd Street. He's driving a drop-top Cadillac. Last week he took all my money, and it may sound funny, but I come to get my money back. And everybody say, Jack, don't you know? Don't tug on Superman's cape. Don't spit into the wind. Don't pull the mask off the Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with Jim. So finally, the third stanza says, a hush fell over the pool room. Jimmy came bopping in off the street, and when the cutting was done, the only part that wasn't bloody was the soles of the big man's feet. Yeah, he was cut in 100 places and shot in a couple more, and you better believe it. Here is the line. Here is the line that is the rhetoric of reversal. They sung a different kind of story when Big Jim hit the floor. So it goes on to the chorus again, and then the last verse says, yeah, Big Jim got his. Find out where it's at. It's not hustling people strange to you, even if you got a two-piece custom-made pool cue. Yeah, you don't tug on Superman's cape. You don't spit into the wind. You don't pull the mask off the old Lone Ranger. But the last line is, you don't mess around with Slim. It's changed. That is the role reversal rhetoric of a ballad song. So, what does that have to do with Esther chapter 9? Many of the battle reports in the Bible are used as propaganda to gather support and strike fear into the heart of their adversaries. In other words, it's a swindle. In addition to exaggerating the extent of their victories, the ancients often embellished the numbers of the dead as well. So let's think through this chapter. So in verses 1 through 11, the time has come for Haman's decree to be enacted. Mordecai has a countering decree, so you have these two decrees butting heads. In verses 1 through 11, we see that the fear of their enemies were due in part to the fact that Haman is now dead. He's out of the way. However, in the midst of feasting, there is fighting. So in verses 12 through 19, what you find are some numbers. Let me read a couple of things here. It says, the number of those slain in the citadel of Susa was reported to the king that same day. The king said to Queen Esther, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman in the citadel of Susa. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is your petition? It will be given to you. What is your request? It will also be granted. So the king will say to Queen Esther, is there anything else that you need done? So there have been here, these 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman have been killed. But that's not enough. She requests another day of battle. Well, that goes beyond the decree. Do you see what I'm saying? And so on that second day of battle, which she requests, she says this, verse 13, if it pleases the king, Esther answered, give the Jews in Susa permission to carry out this day's edict tomorrow, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on gallows. So the king commanded that this be done. An edict was issued in Susa, and they hanged the 10 sons of Haman. And the Jews in Susa came together on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and they put to death in Susa 300 men, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. Now that's an interesting tagline. And it goes back in the history of the Jews where the Amalekites and the Jewish people are fighting one another in 1 Samuel chapter 15. And in that particular battle, God told King Saul to kill everything, the men, the women, and the livestock, the children too. But King Saul didn't do that. He kept all of the best livestock for himself. So Samuel will come along and tell King Saul, God is going to remove you from your kingship because you did not listen to what he said. Now in this text here, there's this battle that goes on, but this time, instead of destroying everything, they didn't take any of the plunder. So it's almost as if in this rhetoric, it's trying to show that they still have a heart. Now, think about that for a moment. Is there any heart in this? Listen, verse 14. So the king commanded that this be done. An edict was issued in Susa. They hanged the 10 sons of Haman. The Jews in Susa came together on the 14th month of Adar, and they put to death in Susa 300 men. But it doesn't stop there. Verse 16, meanwhile, the remainder of the Jews that are outside the city of Susa, who were in the king's provinces, also assembled to protect themselves and get relief from their enemies, and they killed 75,000 of them, but did not lay their hands on the plunder. There's that second tagline again. Okay, you've killed 500, you've killed 10 sons of Haman, you've killed 300, now you've killed outside the city of Susa 75,000 people, but we didn't touch the livestock. What on earth is going on here? Well, amidst the fighting and the feasting, the book of Esther ends with this violent rendition of this act of self-defense, supposedly. But the ending of this Purim story, while it certainly can be read as a legitimate battle of self-defense, and that's the way most traditional Bible commentators take it, I think there's a couple of things that don't add up in my mind. First of all, the sheer number of deaths is shocking. Surely self-defense would not require the killing of that amount of people. So you only have 2 days, and you have over 75,800, I think it was, and 10 people that have been killed. Even in modern warfare, that's astounding. Secondly, there is little suggestion elsewhere that Haman's feelings toward the Jews reflected the rest of the population. So Haman hated Mordecai and he hated the Jews and he wanted to get rid of them, but is that the way all the people felt? Don't know. Thirdly, if other citizens of Susa planned to participate in the slaying of the Jews, they were presumably doing it out of obedience to the king's edict. But the first edict has been replaced with the second one. So why would they carry that out? Now here's my best guess as what's going on in this chapter. My best guess is this is how God allows his children to tell the story. In other words, there is a tendency in the biblical writers to let the people tell the story within their custom and their culture. In their custom and in their culture, it's not unusual for an exaggeration because it's serving their political purposes. Now, let's go back to the schoolyard again. So when we are in fisticuffs with somebody else when we were young on the playground, do you remember your mama type things? I don't even remember some of them, to tell you the honest truth, because some of them were quite lame. You know, your mama wears combat boots. Well, here we are in the 21st century, and mamas really do wear combat boots. So what type of slander is that? Well, back in the 70s, I guess it was an insult. Or your mama is so big, when she sits around the house, she sits around the house. I mean, how stupid are those comments, right? Well, I think children probably have gotten a little bit more terse in the way they say some of these things now. But think about it for a moment. Those kids that are on the playground are speaking only from their own perspective. So another dynamic the playground is to lift up maybe your dad. Maybe in the eyes of a young child, dad is the greatest and he can lift 1,000 pounds type thing. But as children get older, they begin to be more realistic. They begin to understand both their strengths and their shortcomings, and that includes their parents and their siblings as well. And life becomes more sophisticated and more complex, and it's not as easy as casting all people into a lump description. In other words, we become more mature. In the Old Testament, you have kind of an immature way of portraying certain things, but it's all moving toward Christ, a more mature understanding. So the son of someone that's on the playground, all he has when he's young is the experiences, and his knowledge base is only so big. But as he becomes a teenager, or perhaps he gets married and becomes a father himself, he begins to understand the complexities of the world, and he begins to understand that there are not simple explanations. So what we're finding in Esther at the end of this book is a unique mode of writing that exaggerates. And as it exaggerates, the one thing it's trying to do is intimidate other people. It's highly unlikely that 75,000 people were killed in one day. The narrator here cares about appearance, because appearance is the symbol of intimidation. We need to keep in mind that this whole book has been about reversals. And in order to have a decree look the complete reversal of Haman's decree, you need to often embellish certain things. So what we find here is the confidence of the reversal that gives hope for tomorrow. In other words, if there are other empires that read of this account, they'll think twice about attacking the Jews, because the Jews have a hope that is built beyond the moment. They have a hope for tomorrow. And that is the role of reversal often in the Scriptures. It's a great tradition. It's an uneven proposition between one side to the other. Only God sees the whole picture, and all we can see is the incremental progress. But think about how the Scriptures are written, even into the New Testament. Think about the role of reversal rhetoric, of our own faith. Think of some of these passages that we might not give a second thought to. Jesus says, "The many who are first will be last, and the last will be first." The rhetoric of role reversal. How about in Luke chapter 1, where you have the great Magnificat, and it says, "He has cast down the mighty from their thrones, but lifted up the lowly. The hungry he has filled with good things, but the rich he has sent away empty." The rhetoric of role reversal. Think of the Beatitudes. "Blessed are you who are now hungry, for you will be satisfied." Role reversal. "Blessed are you who are now weeping, for you will laugh." Role reversal. "Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you, and they insult you, and denounce you as evil on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice and leap for joy on that day. Behold, your reward will be great in heaven." Role reversal. Or how about this one? "I consider that the sufferings of this present time are as nothing compared to the glory to be revealed for us." Romans chapter 8, verse 18. Role reversal. Now here's that passage I read earlier. For this, no, it's not. I'll take that back. This is another one in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. I misspoke. "For this momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to what is seen, but to what is unseen. For what is seen is transitory, but what is unseen is eternal." That's 2 Corinthians 4, 17 and 18. A lot of role reversal occurs in the Scripture. And many times it is exaggerated language that allows us to have hope. And that's the purpose of it. So at the end of the book of Esther, what we are finding is in that unique cultural and historical moment that Esther and the editors of the book of Esther will really do right over the top, because this rhetoric gives the assurance of role reversal. In other words, Esther's ending is to encourage the reader that you can bet your bottom dollar on tomorrow. There is a tomorrow for you. In other words, you can trust that God will take you into tomorrow. And that's our takeaway here as well. You see, Purim will become a festival of trust in tomorrow. It will use feasting and costumes and revelry that we'll talk about next week. But the greatest swindle in all of history is the great role reversal in Christ. In other words, violent men and women demanded the death of Jesus. That's what the Passion Week was all about. We see this conflict occurring between Jesus and the religious leaders. But in that storyline, what we find is while Jesus went to the cross and while he died upon the cross, little did his enemies know that he was securing the victory. And here's the passage that I read earlier in the service. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 6 through 10. Listen to the role reversal here. We do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature. Isn't that an interesting insight? But not the wisdom of this age or the rulers of this age who are coming to nothing. No, we declare God's wisdom, a mystery that has been hidden and that God destined for our glory before time began. Now, the rulers of this age, if they had understood it, they would have never crucified the Lord of glory. They did not understand that the act upon the cross was the greatest role reversal in history. If they understood it, they never would have killed Jesus. It says then, however, it is written, what no eye has seen and what no ear has heard and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love him. These are the things God has revealed to us by his Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. The role reversal is immaturity to maturity. The role reversal is we're killing the Christ to resurrection. Do you see what I'm saying? It's from darkness to light. It's from blindness to vision. Friends, the great role reversal that is found in Christ is that the great swindle of history is that Jesus knew all the moves of all that were moving against God's plan in the world, and yet he was able to secure the victory. And he did so non-violently. He did so without taking a life. He did so hanging upon a cross. He did so offering forgiveness, and he did so by uttering these words, "It is finished." It's finished. The great role reversal has taken place. Now there is salvation rather than sin. Now there's eternal life rather than death. All of this is found throughout the Scriptures, the rhetoric of role reversal. And that's the only way I can understand the book of Esther chapter 9. God is working in such a way that he allows his children to tell the story within their own context. But as he does so, he's moving humanity forward so that we might find maturity in Christ. And all of a sudden we begin to realize something, maybe that we never realized before, that God is like Jesus Christ. God has always been like Jesus Christ. We didn't always know that, but now we do. Amen. Here's how I would like for the three of us to conclude our service today. This week is St. Patrick's Day, and in a moment we're going to read together a prayer by St. Patrick. But it's been 5 years since St. Patrick's Day in 2016 that I personally have felt that I have a freedom to be able to be who I am and to express the love of God to each and every person that I come in contact with. And it's a great freedom, and it's one that I trust that you will have as well. So let's read this with great hope. May the strength of God pilot us. May the power of God preserve us. May the wisdom of God instruct us. May the hand of God protect us. May the way of God direct us. May the shield of God defend us. May the host of God guard us against the snares of the evil ones, against temptations of the world. May Christ be with us. May Christ be before us. May Christ be in us. Christ be over all. May thy salvation, Lord, always be ours, this day, O Lord, and evermore. Amen and amen. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you real soon online. God bless you.